Tuesday, 9:15 a.m. The parking validation ticket was still warm in my hand when I found the envelope on my desk. My son-in-law must have left it while I was downstairs getting the car validated for the board visitor lot, a task I'd done 1,000 times before, but apparently would never need to do again. No conversation, no phone call, just a sealed envelope with the company's letterhead pressed sharp at the edges. My name typed across the front like something you'd find on a subpoena. Effective immediately. Please coordinate with Human Resources for transition of duties. I'm Robert Carver. Most people call me Bob. I'm 54 years old, and I just received a termination notice from my own son-in-law at Brennan Regional Health Systems, the company I'd spent 31 years turning from a 2-hospital operation in East Nashville into a 7-state healthcare network worth north of $1 billion. I'm the CFO who built the financial architecture that made this company attractive enough to take public. I'm the man who stayed through 3 recessions, 2 leadership transitions, and 1 genuine federal audit that could have ended everything if I hadn't known exactly which calls to make in exactly which order. What my son-in-law didn't understand when he left that envelope on my desk was that he'd just triggered something Jim Hadley had built for me 22 years ago, something that would come due in exactly 72 hours. I set the envelope down and looked at my watch. The IPO registration window opened Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern. Without my CFO certification on the S-1 filing, Meridian Health Partners' $1.2 billion acquisition of Brennan Regional couldn't proceed. Not legally, not without renegotiation. The SEC didn't accept unsigned certifications, and only I could provide that signature because Jim had made very sure of that, long before anyone named Derek Moss had ever walked through these doors. I left the envelope on the desk, where my son-in-law could find it when he came looking for me. I took my coffee. I walked to the elevator. I drove home through Nashville traffic on a Tuesday morning, feeling, for the first time in 3 decades, entirely and completely free. My wife was in the sunroom when I walked in, reading the kind of novel she'd been promising herself she'd get to for years. Carol had been an ER nurse for 27 years. She'd seen people at their worst and somehow still believed the best about most of them. She looked up over her reading glasses and read my face the way only someone who's shared your bed for 30 years can. She set the book face down on her knee. Derek, what did he say this time? I handed her the envelope. She opened it without ceremony, read it twice, and then set it on the coffee table with the precise, deliberate calm of someone who has learned, through long practice, not to say the first thing that comes to mind. He's been planning this, she said finally, since the Meridian deal was announced. She folded her hands in her lap. Outside, I could see our daughter's car in the driveway. Our daughter, who was married to the man who'd just fired me, who was currently upstairs with our 6-year-old grandson because she'd driven up from Brentwood yesterday for what she thought was a routine visit. Some things I'd have to untangle very carefully. What exactly does this do? Carol asked. To the IPO. I poured myself a glass of water at the kitchen counter and stood there the way I used to stand during longboard calls, weight on one foot, thinking through sequencing. Jim wrote a clause into my employment agreement back in 2003. He was CFO before me, spent 40 years in healthcare finance, and watched 3 different hospital systems get gutted by people who understood leverage but not medicine. When he handed me the CFO role, he made one condition. He said, I want a provision in your contract that protects the institutional knowledge this company runs on, not a severance package, not a non-compete, something with teeth. Carol waited. If I'm terminated without cause within 90 days of any major capital transaction, IPO, merger, acquisition, my unvested equity automatically converts to a performance warrant. That warrant gives me the exclusive right to withhold or provide my CFO certification on any regulatory filing related to that transaction. Without my certification on the S-1, the filing is incomplete under Sarbanes-Oxley. Meridian can't close. The IPO collapses. My wife was quiet for a long moment. In the backyard, a cardinal landed on the feeder she'd hung last spring near the old maple tree we'd planted when our daughter was born. Nashville was having one of those October mornings that felt like a gift, cool and golden, the kind that makes you wonder why you ever spent them indoors. Derek doesn't know, she said. Derek has never once read a complete contract in his life. He reads executive summaries. His father-in-law reads contracts. I paused. His former father-in-law. Carol looked at me carefully. Bob, our daughter. I know. Whatever happens with the company, whatever happens with Derek, she's still our daughter. And that little boy upstairs is still our grandson. I know that too. I sat down across from her. I need you to know something. I'm not going to burn it all down. That's not what this is. She studied my face. After 30 years, she knew the difference between my anger and my resolve, and she could tell which one this was. Jim told me something the day he retired, I said. We were at Prince's Hot Chicken on Charlotte Avenue, red tablecloth, paper plates. He was 68 years old and he'd just spent 40 years in this industry, and he said, Bob, the only thing worth protecting in a hospital system isn't the real estate or the equipment or even the brand. It's the trust the community places in the institution. Protect that, and you protect everything else. I looked out at the cardinal on the feeder. Derek tried to buy $1 billion company and forgot the man who made it worth $1 billion. What happens in 72 hours? I checked my watch. 69 hours and 43 minutes, actually. And that depends entirely on what Derek does between now and Friday morning. I went upstairs to the study and powered up the workstation I'd built during the pandemic when the whole world was running on Zoom and caffeine. The familiar rhythm of the dual monitors coming to life felt like muscle memory. On the second screen, I opened a countdown application and set it for Friday, 9 a.m. 6小时41分08秒. Then I did something I'd been prepared to do since the day Jim walked me through the claws over bad coffee in his corner office. I opened the secure partition where I'd kept every version of my CFO certification protocols, the ones that interface directly with the SEC's EDGAR filing system. Without my biometric authorization, those protocols were inert. The S1 was a document, not a filing, and a document without the required certifications was legally nothing. I also opened my email and composed 3 separate messages to 3 separate people. I set them to send automatically at 9:01 a.m. Friday, unless I manually canceled them. The first went to Patricia Okafor, Meridian's lead acquisition attorney. The second went to Marcus Webb, the managing director at the investment bank running the IPO underwriting. The third went to the SEC's Division of Corporation Finance, flagging a potential issue with key personnel continuity representations in an upcoming S1 filing. Not threats, not accusations, just notifications that certain representations made in the registration documents might require verification given recent organizational changes at the registrant. Professional. Precis. The kind of language that makes attorneys cancel their weekend plans. I watched the countdown tick. 69 hours, 38 minutes, and 52 seconds. My phone showed a missed call from a number I didn't recognize. Nashville area code, downtown exchange. I didn't call back. Instead, I texted Marcus Webb directly. We'd worked together on 2 previous bond offerings, and he was the kind of person who responded to texts at 11 at night because he actually cared about getting things right. I kept it simple. Marcus, you should ask Brennan's counsel to confirm CFO certification status before Friday's filing window. Some personnel changes may affect the Sarbanes-Oxley representations. Heresy. I sent it and set my phone face down on the desk. The thing people don't understand about financial certifications is that they're not formalities. Under SOX Section 302, a CFO signature isn't a rubber stamp, it's a personal legal attestation. It means I personally attest that the financial statements don't contain material misstatements, that internal controls are functioning, that disclosure is complete. You can't just swap in a new signature from someone who's been in the role for 72 hours. The SEC asks questions. Auditors ask questions. Investment banks ask questions. Derek had fired me to avoid paying out $240,000 in unvested options. He'd calculated that terminating me before the Friday vesting date would save the company $250,000. What he hadn't calculated was that those options were attached to a clause that converted them into something worth considerably more than $240,000 when misused. My phone rang. This time I recognized the number. It was Patricia. Bob, I'm going to skip the small talk. We've got a problem. Good morning, Patricia. Marcus Webb called me 11 minutes ago, asking about CFO certification status. I called Brennan's general counsel. He told me there was a personnel change this morning. Please tell me that means something other than what I think it means. That depends on what you think it means. A pause that told me she already knew exactly what it meant. If you're no longer employed by Brennan Regional as of this morning, then the certifications in the S1 require reconfirmation by an individual with sufficient knowledge of the company's financial controls and reporting systems to attest personally to their accuracy. Someone who has been in a position to know those systems for a meaningful period of time. Your words, not mine. But yes. Another pause. Bob, does your employment agreement contain anything I should be aware of? I'd suggest asking Brennan's general counsel to pull my complete contract file, specifically any addenda from 2003 relating to capital transaction contingencies. That clause, she knew. Of course she knew she was the best healthcare M&A attorney in Tennessee, and she'd done her diligence. She just hadn't flagged it as a risk, because nobody had imagined the CFO would be fired 3 days before an IPO filing window by his own son-in-law. Patricia, I'm not looking to blow up a deal that's been in the works for 18 months. Then what are you looking for? A conversation. Not with Derek, with the board. She was quiet for a moment. I'll make some calls. After we hung up, I sat back and looked at the countdown. 67 hours, 22 minutes, and 41 seconds. I thought about Jim, who had been gone for 4 years now, a stroke at 72, quick and without warning, the way he would have wanted to go. I thought about the last time I'd visited him in the memory care facility in Germantown, before things got too far along, when he still had his sharpest days. He'd gripped my hand across the table and said, "Bob, the people who build things and the people who buy things are always going to be in conflict. Make sure you're holding the right cards when that moment comes." He'd been building toward that moment for 22 years, without ever knowing exactly when it would arrive. Carol brought me lunch at noon. She set a plate of turkey and cheddar on the corner of my desk and didn't ask questions. My phone had 4 missed calls and 11 emails. I answered none of them. At 2:30 p.m., my daughter called. I picked up on the second ring. She cut straight to it the way she always had, direct like her mother, impatient like me. "Dad, what is going on? Derek came home an hour ago, and he won't tell me anything, except that there was a strategic restructuring and something about a regulatory question on the IPO. Sweetheart, don't sweetheart me. He fired you, didn't he? It wasn't a question." She was 31 years old and had watched her father work for 31 years, and she understood exactly what the words strategic restructuring meant when they came from her husband's mouth after a morning at the office. He did. Silence. Then, how bad is it going to get? That depends on some decisions in the next couple of days. Dad, I need you to be straight with me. Is Derek going to lose the company? I chose my words carefully. I'm not going to let that happen. But Derek needs to understand that some decisions have consequences that outlast the moment they're made. More silence. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. He told me before we got married that he was going to take that company places. I believed him. He's smart. He could still do it. He just needs to learn some things first. Like not firing the CFO 3 days before a billion-dollar IPO. That would be a good place to start. After we hung up, I stood at the window of my study and watched the last of the afternoon light move across the backyard. The maple tree had gone orange at the edges. My grandson's bicycle was propped against the porch rail. Normal things, ordinary things, the kind you miss when you're spending 60-hour weeks inside a glass building downtown. My phone buzzed. Gerald Whitmore, longest-serving member of the Brennan board, the man who'd been there since Walter Brennan himself, was still coming into the office every day before the Parkinsons made that impossible. Gerald's text said 4 words. "We need to talk." I called him back immediately. "Bob, I'm going to say something, and I need you to hear it clearly." His voice was the measured cadence of a 70-year-old man who had learned not to waste words. The board held an emergency call this afternoon. Derek has been formally suspended pending review. Richard, the company's general counsel, pulled your contract file an hour ago and briefed us on the 2003 addendum. All right, what you're sitting on could end this company. I know that. 840 employees, Bob. People with kids and mortgages and health insurance that runs through this system. I know Derek was wrong. I know what he tried to do. But those people didn't make that decision. That hit exactly where Gerald intended it to hit. Because I'd thought about those employees every year for 31 years. I'd stayed through the bad years, the restructurings, the regulatory threats, the moments when we could have sold cheap and let someone else worry about the balance sheet. I'd stayed because of those 840 people. Gerald, I'm not trying to collapse the company. I never was. Then what do you need? A real conversation, the full board. Friday morning, before the filing window. Derek doesn't come. He won't be there. And I need the board to understand that this is about more than my termination. Jim Hadley built a system here. I've been maintaining it, evolving it, for 30 years. Whoever takes over the CFO function needs to be someone who actually understands what's under the hood, not someone Derek promoted to manage optics. Who are you thinking? Sarah Kim. She's been my deputy for 6 years, knows every system, every covenant, every regulatory relationship this company has. She's 39 years old, she has a CPA and an MBA from Vanderbilt, and she turned down a senior role at HCA 3 times because she believes in what we're building here. Gerald was quiet for a moment. I remember her from the audit committee presentations. Sharp. The sharpest person in that building. And she stayed when Derek tried to push her out 6 months ago. He tried to push her out, offered her a lateral move to special projects. She came to me. I went to Richard. It stopped. Gerald cleared his throat. Derek has made some significant errors in judgment. He's 31. People can change if the stakes are real enough. You sound surprisingly charitable for a man who got handed a termination notice this morning. Jim used to say that the worst thing you can do to someone who makes a mistake is protect them from its consequences. Derek needs to live with what he did. But 840 people don't. We agreed on a call time. I hung up and looked at the countdown. 51 hours, 8 minutes and 33 seconds. Carol found me in the backyard at dusk, sitting on the old teak bench we'd bought at a farm sale in Franklin the year our daughter started high school. My grandson had gone inside an hour ago, red-cheeked and satisfied, having spent the afternoon doing the kind of purposeful nothing that 6-year-olds are extraordinarily good at. She sat down next to me and handed me a mug of coffee, the way she'd been doing for 30 years, with exactly the right amount of milk and no sugar. The Nashville skyline was just visible over the tree line to the north, the kind of view we'd bought this house for back when the neighborhood was quieter. "How are you feeling?" she asked. Honestly, like something has been lifted. I wrapped both hands around the mug. I've been holding my breath for about 3 years, watching Derek make decisions, watching the board let it happen because Walter built something real, and they didn't want to believe his son-in-law was going to burn it. "Walter knew," she said. "He told me at that Christmas party 2 years ago. He said, 'Carol, I'm worried about the boy. He wants too much too fast. Walter's sick. He can't run it anymore. He trusted family. And now the board is involved and Derek is suspended, and we'll see what Friday looks like.'" She pulled her cardigan tighter against the October cool. "Patricia Okafor called me this afternoon. That surprised me. She called you directly? She said she couldn't reach you and she wanted to know if you were serious about not wanting to destroy the deal. I told her that in 30 years I'd never once seen you want to destroy anything. Build, yes. Fix, constantly. Destroy, never." What did she say? She said, "That's exactly what I needed to hear." Carol looked at the tree line. She also said Meridian is prepared to offer you a direct consulting arrangement for the financial integration. If things go sideways with Brennan. I hadn't expected that. How direct? She used the phrase substantially compensated. She said to call her Thursday. I thought about that for a moment. A direct arrangement with Meridian would mean stepping entirely outside Brennan's corporate structure. It would mean the $240,000 in options was the least significant number in the entire conversation. "I'm not going to do that," I said. Carol turned to look at me. 840 people, I said. Sarah Kim. The cardiology program we spent 4 years building in East Nashville. The community health clinics in Antioch and Hermitage that nobody else was going to fund. If I walk, that's all Derek's problem now. And he will absolutely make a mess of it. So you're going back. I'm going back to make sure the transition is real. 6 months, maybe 8. Long enough to train Sarah properly, document everything that lives in my head and needs to live somewhere else, and make sure the institutional relationships don't disappear when I walk out the door for good. She studied my face for a long moment. The cardinal was back on the feeder, just visible in the fading light. And after that, we go to the mountains. That place in Asheville you've been looking at for 2 years. We stay a month. I learn how to sleep past 6. You finish every book on that nightstand. She smiled and leaned against my shoulder the way she'd been doing since we were 23 years old and barely knew what we were getting ourselves into. You sound almost peaceful. I think I might actually be. My phone buzzed once. A text from a number I'd given out to exactly 3 people in the building. Sarah Kim, Mr. Carver. I heard what happened. Whatever you need, S. I typed back, stay put, talk Thursday. She replied with a single word, understood. Friday morning came in gray and cool, the kind of Nashville October that smells like wet leaves and wood smoke. I was in the Brennan Regional Boardroom by 8:15, visitor badge on my lapel, coffee from Crema in my hand, because I'd decided some things were worth the drive. Gerald was already there. So were 5 other board members I recognized from 20 years of budget presentations and audit reviews. Patricia Okafor sat at the far end of the table with 2 attorneys I didn't know. No Derek. Richard Lawson, the general counsel, stood when I walked in. He was 63 years old and had been at Brennan for 15 years, and he had the look of a man who'd spent the last 72 hours not sleeping. Bob. The board wants me to formally state that Derek's actions on Tuesday were unauthorized, inconsistent with the company's employment policies, and are under full review by the Compensation Committee. His suspension is effective, and his future with the company is being evaluated. I appreciate that, Richard. We also want to acknowledge that the board should have been more attentive to certain personnel dynamics over the past 18 months. That's a failure of governance that we own. I sat down. Let's talk about what happens next. Patricia pulled up the filing interface on her laptop. The clock on the wall read 8:43, 17 minutes, until the window opened. The S1 is complete and accurate in every material respect, I said. The financials are clean, the disclosures are thorough, everything Meridian reviewed is exactly what it says it is. I paused. I'm prepared to provide my certification. The relief in the room was immediate and physical. The collective exhale of people who had spent 4 days running contingency scenarios and hadn't found a clean way out of any of them. But I have conditions. Gerald leaned forward. Name them. Sarah Kim is named acting CFO, effective today, with a permanent appointment subject to board ratification within 60 days. She gets my title, my salary, and my seat at the leadership table. Not a temporary designation. A real appointment. Done. Second, I'll consult on the Meridian integration for 6 months, remote and part-time. The purpose of those 6 months is to transfer knowledge, not to run the department. Sarah runs the department. I answer questions. Agreed. Third, the board formally reviews executive authority procedures for the post-IPO governance structure. What happened Tuesday cannot be structurally possible in the new company. A 31-year-old with a title but no experience cannot unilaterally terminate key personnel on the eve of a billion-dollar transaction. Whatever governance framework Meridian expects, it needs to include real checks. The board members exchanged glances. Gerald nodded slowly. We'll commit to a full governance review as part of the post-merger integration. My watch showed 8:58. 2 minutes. I opened my laptop and pulled up the SEC certification portal. 31 years of institutional knowledge, embedded in a filing that would take 45 seconds to authorize. I thought about Jim Hadley in that booth at Prince's, red checkered tablecloth, plastic cup of sweet tea, talking about what it meant to build something worth protecting. I thought about Sarah Kim, who had turned down a better title and more money 3 times because she believed the work here was real. I thought about 840 people who would show up Monday morning and have no idea how close the floor had come to dropping out from under them. At exactly 9 a.m., I provided my biometric authorization. Certification complete. S1 filing submitted. Confirmation number 2024101 Nobody in the room spoke for a moment. Then Patricia closed her laptop. Gerald poured himself a glass of water. One of the board members I didn't know very well actually put his face in his hands and exhaled. Thank you, Bob, Gerald said quietly. Thank Jim Hadley. I stayed for another hour, going through the transition protocol with Richard and walking Patricia's team through the certification documentation. At 10:30, I gathered my things, shook hands around the table, and rode the elevator down to the lobby for the second time in my career, feeling like I was leaving on my own terms. Sarah was waiting near the security desk. She fell into step beside me as I walked toward the exit. Acting CFO, I said. How does it sound? Terrifying, she said. But right, you've been doing this job for 3 years. You just didn't have the title. She was quiet for a moment. We pushed through the glass doors into the cool October morning. Mr. Carver, can I ask you something? Bob, please. Bob. She gathered herself. Why didn't you just take Meridian's offer? Patricia told me they reached out to you directly. You could have walked away with, I know what I could have walked away with. Then why? I thought about how to answer that. About Jim. About Carol. About my grandson's bicycle propped against the porch rail. About the cardiology program in East Nashville and the clinics in Antioch that ran because someone had stayed long enough to fight for their budget year after year. Because the work is bigger than any one deal, I said. Jim taught me that, and now I'm teaching you. I looked at her. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. She nodded. She looked like she was committing it to memory. You don't need my approval anymore, I said. You've earned it. Now go run a CFO department. She stood a little straighter. Then she turned and walked back through those glass doors like she owned the place. She kind of did. I drove home through Nashville on a Friday morning with the windows cracked. the radio tuned to the classic country station Carol liked. The city looked different at this hour, slower, more human, the version of itself it only showed when the people who built it weren't too busy to look. Carol was at the kitchen table when I walked in, grandson on her lap, both of them working through a puzzle with the focused intensity of serious collaborators. She looked up when she heard the door. "Well, it's done." She studied my face. "Good done? Good done." I sat across from her and helped find a corner piece. Patricia called as I was leaving the parking garage. The filing went through without issue. Meridian is confirming the acquisition timeline. Everything holds. And Derek? That's Richard and the board's problem, not mine. She reached across the puzzle pieces and squeezed my hand once. Our grandson looked up from the puzzle, assessed the situation, decided it did not require his attention, and went back to finding the edge pieces. That evening we sat on the porch with Bell's beers, same as we'd done most Fridays for 30 years, except this one felt different in a way I couldn't fully explain. The kind of different that happens when something you've been carrying for a long time finally gets set down somewhere permanent. My phone sat inside. I'd left it on the counter without vibrating for the first time in maybe a decade. "What are you thinking about?" Carol asked. Jim, what he'd say about all of this. What do you think he'd say? I watched the light go out of the backyard sky, the maple going dark against the orange. He'd probably say he was glad the clause worked, and then he'd ask if I wanted another beer. She laughed a real laugh, the kind she used when she forgot to be careful about being too happy. I hadn't heard it enough over the past few years. From inside the house, I could hear my grandson laughing at something, that particular kind of 6-year-old laughter that doesn't have any agenda behind it. Just pure, unearned joy at being alive and finding things funny. Some things are worth more than any certification, any filing, any clause Jim Hadley ever wrote. Some things are worth staying for, and some things are worth finally letting go of on your own terms, at a time of your own choosing, with the people who mattered most sitting right there beside you when you do. A text came through on my phone inside. I heard it buzz against the counter. I didn't move.
They say just forget. Move on like it's easy. But forgetting you feels like remembering someone I've never seen. I've been trying to erase you from the places in my mind, but the harder that I fight it, the more you're hard to leave behind. Every memory keeps slipping through the cracks I try to close, like a face I should remember, but somehow never know. Forgetting you feels impossible, like chasing something I can't hold, like trying to remember someone that I've never even known. I keep reaching through the silence for a past I can't undo, 'cause letting go of what we had feels like losing something true. Every moment turns to fragments, every thought just fades to blue, like I'm searching for a feeling that still only leads to you. Forgetting you feels impossible, like chasing something I can't hold, like trying to remember someone that I've never even known. I keep reaching through the silence for a past I can't undo, 'cause letting go of what we had feels like losing something true. But now every empty moment still reminds me what is real. Forgetting you feels impossible, like chasing something I can't hold, like trying to remember someone that I've never even known. I keep reaching through the silence for a past I can't feels like losing something true. Don't pity me. My heart doesn't need your mercy. I can still stand on my own. I was broken by your leaving, fell deeper than I thought I would. But pain has taught me how to heal now and survive what once I couldn't. You don't have to look back sadly, don't reach out with guilty hands. What you shattered made me stronger. Now I rise where I once collapsed. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. I once begged for your affection. Now I've learned my worth in scars. And the man you left in pieces found his own way through the dark. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. So keep your sympathy behind you. I don't need what's left undone. Sometimes losing who once broke you is how healing has begun. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll rise alone again. I'll rise alone